Ah, the Caesar series. Oh, the fond memories of creating intricate road systems and the likewise fond frustrations of not having enough plebes to maintain them. I played the first two titles way back when computer CPUs couldn't go beyond 100 MHz, and they've left a wonderful impression in some of the cobwebbiest parts of my memory. Building up and managing the lives of ancient Romans fits the bill quite nicely when it comes to my own personal thematic preferences in terms of city builder games, since the lack of a proper theme has been my common critique in both Banished and Settlers 2 10th Anniversary Edition videos. So when my passion for city builders was reignited by Banished last year, I thought it would be time to go back to the Caesar games and pick up the series where I left off, at Caesar 3. How would the game impact me today, almost 20 years after it was released? While this is by no means the game's main characteristic, I feel the need to start the review by saying how good the graphics look. Granted, you might have to have an appreciation for pixel art in general in order to really appreciate it, but I feel that even if you don't, you'll still be impressed by how cool the buildings look, regardless of their size, and also how descriptive the animations for each of them are. Not to mention the odd, weird Easter egg type animation of seeing some of the lion tamers walk their lions around the town. The game also sounds great, and you have the option of clicking on any one member of your city, or walker as they're technically called, and get a very street level idea of what needs to be improved in their respective block. And blocks will be your urban design bread and butter, as this is the only way to truly optimize and coordinate supply chains with your walkers' needs. But before I dive deeper into the review, I should also mention that the game actually starts with a cinematic introduction to the Roman Empire. I found this to be a bit surprising, since odds are one wouldn't exactly be playing the third game in a series and have no idea what the series is about. Nor would I expect someone playing a Roman era inspired city builder to have no knowledge of the Roman Empire, because after all...
Alright, but apart from the sanitation, the medicine, education, wine, public order, irrigation, roads, a fresh water system and public health, what have the Romans ever done for us?
Brought peace?
Oh, peace! Shut up!
Caesar 3 is all about building blocks of buildings. Okay, the alliteration sounds kinda weird. It's about constructing blocks of buildings and then arranging them in such a way that they are spaced away from food production and industrial areas so that they cannot negatively influence the value of real estate for homes. Because apparently nobody never wanted to live close to the docks, granaries, reservoirs or marketplaces. Yeah, I found that last one weird also, but while saying this, the blocks also have to be close enough to food sources and goods that your walkers actually need so that they don't go wanting for anything. Even if you prefer the more haphazard and chaotic approach of going with the flow and building things whenever you need them and wherever you can, the Caesar 3 campaign isn't very forgiving once you're done with the first 2 or 3 introductory missions, so I suggest you get a handle on this block building thing as quickly as possible. Thankfully, there is a great resource out there on the web which I used and which I suggest you check out before you jump into the game. It's called Caesar 3 Heaven, and it's a great source of tips, walkthroughs of maps and all manner of useful Caesar related things. I'll make sure to link it in the video description. One major milestone that will help tremendously with this whole block building thing is gatehouses. Once you get access to building gatehouses, make sure to use them. These act as filters for your blocks. They will keep the walkers living there within their blocks, but will allow marketplace workers and other service workers to pass. Otherwise, they'll be running around all over the place and might not end up using the amenities that you've placed right in front of their stupid faces. Which will happen regardless of this sometimes, but just to minimize it. Some other quick basic tips that you should know from the get-go: prioritize water, prefectures, engineering and food production. The first 3 are crucial to get right from the start because they will heavily influence the speed and ease with which your dwellings will evolve. But once you get done with the basics of building roads, providing your people with access to fresh water, a marketplace, make sure that their buildings don't spontaneously burst into flames and that they don't stab each other in the streets, it's time to start dealing with the real problem that lies between you and success. The biggest menace to your people's morale and general welfare. The main obstacle in the way of you having a wonderful Roman-themed virtual ant farm. The mother-humping gods. So let's talk a bit about the Roman gods, as envisioned by Caesar 3. The main disaster mechanic of Caesar 3 is made up almost exclusively by the various Roman gods throwing their hissy fits. The gods are tremendous assholes, and if they're not happy, they will be the source of most of your problems. If on the other hand they're appeased, then they'll give you a bit of a bonus now and then, but then you'll most likely only have to deal with the normal responsibilities of city building and management. The bad things they can do far outweigh the good things they can do, so appeasing them is very important. In this respect, the Roman gods are basically the mob. There are two ways in which you can pay your protection tax, appease the gods. The first one implies you building temples dedicated to them. Here's where the fickle attitudes show themselves first, because you should never have more temples dedicated to any one god than any other, which basically means when you build temples, you need to build one for each of them, otherwise incur their wrath. And it would be great if that would be it, but unfortunately, like mentioned earlier, these are mobster gods I'm talking about. So a one-time payment isn't part of their business model, which brings me neatly enough to the festivals. Every once in a while you should organize festivals in order to keep the morale of your people up. However, each festival must be dedicated to one of the gods, which means, you get it, you have to dedicate festivals to each of them, unless you want them to get jealous and smite you, obviously. Now, depending on the particular map or mission that you're undertaking, you may choose to ignore one god once in a while. After all, Neptune can do fuck all when you don't have ships, but most often than that, ignoring them isn't really an option. So what I suggest you do is to throw small festivals dedicated to each god one after another and space them out once every few months. This way your population will be constantly happy and you'll hit each of the gods once per year. The order in which you do this though should depend on the particularities of each mission. For military campaigns, you should obviously start with Mars. When having to use fish as a food source, you can neglect Neptune, and just to be safe, don't forget about Mercury, since you'll most likely won't be able of producing everything you need on any given map and you'll need to trade for some things. Venus is required for your people's overall mood, and Ceres is crucial if you have a heavy farming map. Now, unfortunately, you cannot simply ignore them and just not build temples at all. Your citizens will require places of worship in order to evolve and develop your housing. So this is a pain in the ass which you'll have to constantly manage. The only other major disaster mechanic is the earthquakes, but once they happen and most likely ruin your game, the next time you start that mission you'll know where the earthquakes happen and you can build around it. And there's also the occasional wolf pack or aggressive people, but in all honesty they're only aggressive because you invaded their land to begin with, so you can't really blame them for that. Also, the best way of dealing with wolves is to slow down the game speed to 10% so you can take your time and also get them to be static for a while, and simply build aqueducts around their initial positions, because then they'll be boxed in and you can always kill them later with some spearmen. Trust me, if you leave the wolves to their own devices, they will eat your people. I found that one out the hard way. Changing the speed that time goes by in the game is an incredibly important feature of the game, obviously slowing it down to almost standstill, allowing you to carefully plan out what goes where and how. And once everything is set, you can speed up time and fill your plots with walkers and then start producing foods and goods. This is such an important feature for city builders in general that I am quite surprised they never made a toggle for it on the main user interface. Instead, you have to go to the menu and speed up or slow down time every time you need to. After spending a lot of time changing the game speed, you get to the point where it's so annoying and flow breaking that you actually start looking into documentation that thankfully the game comes loaded with, and then you find this little piece of info which makes everything run so much smoother. Regardless, however, of how slow or fast you get the time to pass in game, one thing remains constant: that Caesar 3 is a motherfucking time vampire. And I can hear you say, well dude, it's a city builder, by default they're time vampires. To which I would say, I hear you, but you haven't spent 3 fucking days on one goddamn mission trying to get to a population of 5,000. Also, you haven't spent the following 2 weeks worth of gaming time trying to complete what is a legendarily difficult mission and still not managed to finish it successfully. That is what I'm talking about when I say time vampire. So much so that I had to leave the country in order to finally be able to make a clean break and never start the game ever again, because honestly I think I would still be playing that goddamn map. Never a game, Luke Dunum. Never a game, Caesar 3. Full disclosure, I had to leave the country for completely other reasons, but it was a good thing because I got to cut the Caesar 3 cord cold turkey in order to, get to play some other things. Just look at this. Look how many save games I have on this one map. And at least half of these are saves upon saves, so the number is much larger. One playthrough, I thought I could get the mission objectives done once enough time passes. Well, apparently, if you take too much time to complete your mission objectives, Caesar gets pissy and sends the army to bust up your shit. This makes literally no sense, since he's busting up a properly working city of his, but whatever. It is a more epic method of ending a mission than simply getting a message window pop up. Whilst playing the game, I would have really loved the ability to zoom out to get a better overview of what was going on, and maybe Caesar 4 has this feature since that one is 3D. However, as is the case with many titles that develop either a legendary status and or a cult one, someone else on the internet thought about the same thing, and not only that, but they also had the relevant skills to do something about it, instead of simply mentioning it in a video. As such, there's a mod out there that allows you to play the game in higher resolutions, which will make things that much more interesting and even more pleasing to the eyes, since the pixel graphics look incredibly well when they're smaller. It's both a pleasure and quite useful to watch your Romans go about their day in high resolution, since it makes it easier to spot problems in your supply chains. There aren't that many city building game series that can boast the name recognition or the reputation that the Caesar games can. Granted, this is mostly in part due to the fact that they stopped making them back in 2006, long before they could experiment with the formula too much and dilute the city building experience like the SimCity and Cetra series eventually did. And after playing Caesar 3, I can say that it still holds up 20 years after release as a very solid city building experience. My frustrations with that one map and even the fact that I haven't started the game up again aside, it's great, and I do not regret the time that I put into it one bit. I don't really know what to expect from Caesar 4 now, to be honest. I do remember it getting some mixed reviews back when it was released, but other than that I have no idea what it's about. In case you guys played it, leave me a comment telling me whether or not I should give it a try in the near future. Because right now I'm all Romaned out. I think I'll be visiting more Nordic realms with my next city builder review. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.